Hello, and welcome to this episode of Character Forge. My name is Tyler Owens. I'll be your character smith. Joining us once again is my lovely wife, Leigh, who will be doing our character art for us.
Hello.
Today we are going to be building a noblewoman in the Mistborn RPG system. Alright, so last time we talked about the basics of the system and more specifically how you build characters. And we went ahead and did the first step for all of our characters, which is coming up with our crew. If you remember, we're building a group of people from the disgraced House Chaldea, people from the noble House Chaldea, who must track down and kill a certain number of Skaa mistings each year or face execution at the hands of the Steel Ministry. Their primary method for accomplishing this end is to infiltrate Skaa thieving crews. So that's the first step of character creation that we've already done. So from there we move on to our character concept. The concept I have for this character, I want her to be an atium misting, which is pretty rare. But I also want her to be a rebellious noblewoman. So we'll go ahead and mark that down on our character sheet. And I feel like this is a pretty good point to launch into backstory for her, so we kind of have that in mind when we're picking everything else. So we'll start off, I think we're going to name her Zeldariah Chaldea. She was born the first child of an important leader of House Chaldea. Ever since she was very little, she knew that her father was disappointed that she had not been born a male, that he did not have an heir. This caused her to resent her father, doubly so after her brother was born. Never mind that other houses had female heads. Never mind that it was a man and his damned lust that drove their house into ruin in the first place. Heaven forbid he let his daughter take his place. So she began to lash out in increasingly destructive ways. This was a source of major annoyance for her father, but he dealt with it. That is until that day. She doesn't remember why she had to go to the Steel Ministry with her father that day. She doesn't remember why she thought it would be a good idea to insult an inquisitor. Sadly enough, she doesn't even remember what she said to the thing. A pity, since those were her last words. She remembered her father's desperate pleas about how his idiot daughter didn't know what she was saying, about how he would beat her every day for a year, if only they would please spare her life. And they did. But in retribution, the Inquisitor cut out her tongue. She was 11. Her father was true to his word. Every day for a year, he beat her to within an inch of her life. She doesn't know exactly when she snapped during that time, or why she didn't snap when she was beaten as a child. But she does remember the last night of beatings, as she lay unmoving in her bed, numb to the pain by now. A strange man alighted on her windowsill. A man in a Mistborn cloak. A man with a spike in his chest. She didn't know what to make of it, but she was too weak to fight back or even cry out. Who could she tell anyway? If this was the way it all ended, then so be it. But the man hadn't come to kill her. He closed the distance to her bed in a flash and forced a small bit of metal into her mouth and down her throat and whispered, "Burn it." Her eyes grew wide as she began to see a ghost of what the man would do, the smile appearing first on the apparition, and then spreading across his face as well. "Well, I'll be," he said, placing a small pouch on her bedside table, and just like that he was gone. She had thought it a dream until she awoke with the pouch next to her in the morning. She looked inside and confirmed that what she had been given was atium. Who would bestow such a gift on her? How did they even know she could burn it? What deeper motive must they have had? And why did they have that spike in their chest? Matters only got more complicated when she told her parents and they found out that she was not a Mistborn. Just a misting who could burn atium. Despite how much her father did not trust her, despite how much her father kind of hated her, her new powers were much too much of an asset to not be utilized in the family business. She began training with dueling canes and judiciously with her atium. In time, she became an excellent fighter, although the wounds from the year of beatings never fully healed. As she grew to find their work hunting Skaa mistings to be more and more distasteful. She works for the crew out of necessity in the hopes that she can find a way someday to break their family's curse. So with that, we've got a backstory for Zeldariah. I think, it gives a lot of interesting things for the narrator to work with, which we'll get into a bit more as we continue to build the character. So we're at the step 3 of character creation in the system. We have our 10 important questions. Question number 1 was, why did you join the crew? This is the drive trait. For Zeldariah's drive, her drive is to restore her family's former status as a regular noble house in Luthadel. The next question is, how did you live before you joined the crew? And this is her profession. So this is basically what she does during the daytime as a front for her being, a Skaa misting hunter during the night. Let's say that she's a scholar. She masquerades as a scholar while she's not, on a job. Let's see. Next question. We have, what special skill do you bring to the crew? So I think the cue here that I'm going from is that she can't talk because she doesn't have a tongue. I think she would have capitalized on that. I mean, without any verbal cues, she's already going to be kind of hard to read. So I think she's honed that. She has trained herself to be even more unreadable. So she's particularly good at keeping secrets and keeping her emotions in check. Let's see. For question 4 is, what is your most distinctive feature? I think that's a pretty obvious most distinctive feature, not having a tongue. It's pretty memorable.
I don't know, man.
All right. Question 5 is, how do other people describe your personality? So here's again where we get to the point of where we talk about the difference between who you are and how other people describe you. Because inside, Zeldariah is still just as rebellious as ever. But she's much better at hiding it now, so other people would describe her as reserved. So that's what we're going to write down on our character sheet.
Reserves of rebelliousness.
Something like that, yeah. All right. So now we're to the 3 questions where we have to pick strong, average, and weak about our character. So the first question is about powers. Since she is a misting, we have to go with average powers, which means that we have strong and weak left to choose. I think we're going to go with strong attributes and weak standings, given her family's reputation. So that's questions 6 through 8. Question 9. What is the worst thing that has ever happened to you? Again, this is something that we already have from the backstory. Getting her tongue cut out and enduring a year of beatings. That's going to be her tragedy.
Are you sure? That one's not that bad. I could probably do it. No, I couldn't.
So that's her tragedy. Gives the narrator a lot to work with. Having to overcome, all of that physical abuse and the fact that she can't communicate the way normal people do. Then the last question is what do you believe is your ultimate purpose? The character's destiny. This was also already suggested in the backstory. I'm going to formalize it as save her family. All right. With the questions out of the way, we get to now move on to the step where we flesh out the mechanical details. So, as we have average powers as a misting, we have already said that we're choosing Atium as our metal. As a misting, we get a rating of 5 with our metal, and we also get to choose a stunt with the metal, which is just kind of a special flair that we have when we're burning the metal. So we're going to take ATM advantage. This lets us reduce the dice pool of someone defending or reacting to one of our actions by 2. And if this reduces their dice pool to less than 2, then the action automatically fails. So basically, if we're burning ATM, if Zeldariah is burning ATM, then anything that people do to try and attack her or defend against her attacks is less effective because she can see the future. Pretty normal stuff. So we chose strong attributes. That means we have 13 points to allocate to our 3 different stats, and no attribute can be lower than 2 or higher than 6. I think we're going to go with a strength of 4, a charm of 3, and a wits of 3. Wits of 6. Sorry. Her training has made her strong, but her strength is held back by her past trauma some. She's intentionally not very charming, but between her natural disposition and her second job as a scholar, she has a lot of wits about her. As far as her standings go, with weak standings, we have 9 points to allocate to the 3 standings, and none of them can be higher than 4 or less than 2. We'll take resources of 4, influence of 2, and spirit of 3. As their house is pretty disgraced, she doesn't have much influence. Let's see. This gives us our resiliences with 4 resources and 4 strength. We have 8 health. With 3 charm and 2 influence, we have 5 reputation. And with 3 spirit and 6 wits, we have 9 willpower. So health and willpower are pretty good. Kind of anemic on reputation, so we can't. Zeldariah cannot endure much reputation damage, but I mean that makes sense.
She's kind of anemic anyway, right?
Yeah. All right. So rounding out our character sheet, we're supposed to fill in a bunch of details about stuff. Zeldariah is 31. She is 5'5" and weighs 118 pounds. From our resources of 4, we get to choose 4 props. We are going to take 2 dueling canes and 2 ATM vials, or 1 ATM vial if the narrator determines that an ATM vial should cost 2 props each.
Reasonable. Which
would be reasonable, but since I'm also taking the role of the potential narrator here, I'm going to allow 2 vials. Because she has a mysterious source.
Oh yeah, you said that one already.
Yes, I did.
It's going to be like, ooh, tell me. Oh no, anyway, you already did.
And that's all the stuff that you do to create a basic character. Now, one thing that I didn't talk about last time is that at character creation in this system, your narrator can allow you to start with a certain number of advancements to start off with to kind of build up your character a little bit. For each of our crew, we're going to allow 20 advancements, meaning these characters are fairly experienced already at the start of the campaign. I mean, Zeldariah has been training for 19 years after all. For Zeldariah, she spent a lot of time training physically and training her allomancy, so we'll spend 12 points to increase her ATM rating from 5 to 7, and we'll spend 5 points to increase her physique to 5, which also increases her health to 9. That will leave Zeldariah with 3 unspent advancements at the start of the campaign. And with that, we're done building Zeldariah Keldia, the ATM Misting. Now we're going to find out more about her in future episodes as we build out the rest of the crew, because we're going to start talking about how the crew interacts with each other. But this is where we're going to leave Zeldariah for right now. Thanks again to Leigh for drawing our character for us. You can follow her on Instagram at ReadTheWordsmith. and you can read her webcomic about 5 villains seeking something better at monochromecomic.com. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. And make sure to come back next week when we build a Keeper of Forbidden Love. Until then, keep those forges lit.